Hey, good morning. Or good afternoon, I guess. My name is Samantha Mirabal. I'm with Melka's application team. We're doing our design shop talk today. Um, I don't know how to connect Facebook. It says account expired, so someone at Melco Homebase is going to have to help me with that. So right now we're only live on YouTube, so that'll work for today. So if you have questions while we're live, please type them in on the chat. I've got a chat here on a separate monitor that I monitor. So if you have any questions, just type them in there. Don't send them to me privately. I don't tend to see those while we're live. All right, so I'll start off with the questions that were sent in ahead of time, and we'll go from there. Let's make sure YouTube is actually up. Yes, YouTube is running. Excellent. All right, so questions. There we go. I want to know how they did this, and can you do it with any font? All right, so that's just a bean stitch around the edge of the font, and that's even here, fill stitch bean outline font. All right, so yeah, we can do that. So how do we do it? So over here, we would go create text. That was maybe Times, I don't know, pick a font that has serifs. So we're gonna do that one. And Times, here we go. So I have a font written out, and if I want to put borders on it, I have a few options. I can go in here and go to auto borders, and I can turn that on, change it to a bean stitch, and do it like that. And now I have a bean stitch around the letters. Okay, so that's one option. For that bean stitch, you can then go and adjust its stitch length and other things here. Like right now it's at a 20 and a bean of 3. So if you want it thicker than 3, you can change it here. That's done through this little drop down. Now, what that thickness actually is how many times it goes forward, back, forward, right? So a bean of 3 means it's going to lay 3 pieces of thread down for each stitch location, right? So for each one of these pieces here, there's going to be 3 pieces of thread. So it's going to go forward, 1 piece of thread, back, that's a second, forward, that's 3. So it's going to waltz. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And it's going to put 3 stitches for each of those locations all the way around. If you want them closer together, let's say you think 20 is too big, you can change this down and adjust it. It's going to be mad at me right now. That's all right. So you can make some adjustments over here, and you'll get the smaller stitches along there. All right, so you can play with it that way. So that's one option. If you don't use auto borders, what other choices do you have? So if I go turn off the auto borders, I can take this text, hold my shift key down, and click on that walk stitch, and then give it a different color. Now, I wouldn't suggest doing it this way, or leaving it, creating the bean stitch this way is fine, but leaving it set up this way is not fine, because it's going to sew all the lettering and then all the borders. That's likely to have misalignments on it, right? Because as things sew, things shift around. So if you're going to do it this way, that's fine, but I would take this lettering and operations, convert to wireframe, and then I would move each of these borders along to be together, right? So I would take these two, select them, and drag it. So now those are together. Then I grab those two, drag it to the bottom. Those, drag it to the bottom. So it basically sews the letter and then the outline, the letter and then the outline. So I would do it like that. So it's letter, outline, letter, outline, letter, outline, so on and so forth, right? And the reason being, things move when it embroiders. So to avoid that shift in the registration where the outlines, you know, your letters here and your outlines over here, it's not a cute look, right? So doing it letter, outline, finishing as you go is the best practice, right? And again, if you want to change that bean stitch, you can select these all at once if you want. Oh, let me show you a trick. If I select one, right click, select same type, it'll select all those beans. So then I can make global adjustments here, right? So I can make all those stitches smaller. I can change them all to be the bean. I can say, oh, I want the bean to be 5. I want the bean to be 3. I personally don't know why anyone would do 13, but you know, I guess there's choices. Maybe you should make the stitch long, like a long stitch, and you're trying to make it look really hand done, maybe. I don't know. All right, so that would be adding those borders. Okay, let's see, what other questions do we have? So can you do it with any font? Yeah, just showed you how. When converting letters to outlines, I've been getting really bad results in strange corners. It seems, yeah. Okay, so let's just athletic block to math. All right, and you want to do a satin stitch. Cool. So let's do that. I'm gonna get rid of that. No. New file, text, athletic block. All right, so type some text. I'm gonna hold my control key and click on that. And yeah, it's gonna do weird things. All right, it's just when it converts over, you have to go in and clean it up, right? And it's just where the art is, right? So there's there's different lines on there, right? So that's like right here, you got the stitch directions, which is causing it. So I would actually get rid of that because it's sweeping around. And, oh, it's not gonna do it because it's a fill. That's annoying. Yeah, I don't like this much personally because, well, that's not too bad. It's better than the other where it was going. It's close enough to a cap, I would leave it. So when it comes down to the center, like you had in your picture, you end up with a bubble of stitches right in this area. So it's sweeping around, and that makes a big old mess. So having it as a cap is cool. Having it this way is all right. But you'll see other letters like here. This, I wouldn't stand for because this is going to create a big old bubble where it kind of blooms out. So that one I would redo entirely or try to force it into a cap, one of the two. Yeah, because that right there would not work for me. I would redo that. This T, same thing. You've got weird things going on. It's how the stitch directions are on it, right? So I can go in and delete some of those obscure stitch directions. Get rid of those because they're what's causing it to sweep weird. And then I can fix it that way, right? And it's overlapping, which is why it's closed. So yeah, when you do these conversions, you're gonna have to modify it, or it's better to do it from art, because one of the things that happens when they're digitized, right? So they're digitized to sew in a specific way. So when you convert it over, depending on how it was physically drawn, there might be an extra point, which is not needed when it converts over. So those are the sorts of things you just got to play with it, right? And adjust it so that it works. Like these guys, if I hold the control key and move them over, I have a gap, too much of a gap, but you see, oops, don't hold the control key. All right, so that's the shift. Click, select one, control, select the other, start clicking, and then I can hold the key there. There, that's better, right? So I can clean that up pretty easy. These are all fine. The only one I would still fix is right here, and I might redo that, but I think it looks okay. So yeah, when you do those sorts of conversions with digitized fonts, or any font really, because it's a conversion, it's going to take how it was digitized, which may not have been straight lines. It might have been a fill. It might have been a single line. It might have been a column 2, and it's going to put lines on it. It's going to use the points from those elements, which may not be the correct points for what you want as a single line. So it just means you're going to have to adjust it some. Okay. Let's see. What other questions? Yeah. Oh, there's your picture. So yeah, it's just, that's because of where the points happen to be. I would just change that all together. Make sure you have the corners turned on like we did here. Like this guy, I have corners on automatically, but I would make sure those are turned on for capping purposes, and you can see it cleans it up quite a bit doing that. And then it's a matter of playing with your stitch directions and adjusting your wireframe to be appropriate. All right, I've been using auto density for years. Now you've not been happy with it. It ends up too tight and narrow columns causing thread breaks. Okay, so Um, auto density, right? So script. Let's make this a scripty font because where's script? There it is. Juliet. Where's Juliet? J. No. That one goes really narrow. Yeah, it goes really narrow to really thick. All right. So in the auto density, here's some fun things you can do with it. So the auto density, if you're running it and you go, when it gets to be these small, I prefer something different. So in essence, what I'm saying is you'd like to use auto density, but the auto density is how it's set isn't to your liking. Okay, so right here, there's these 3 dots. We can click on that. And in here, you can go through and adjust how auto density is managed, right? So this says for columns that are 10 points wide, it's going to use a density of 4.7. By the time it gets up to columns or stitches that are over 100 points wide, it's using 3.6. So let's say you want that to be 4.4 or whatever. You can adjust how auto density behaves right here. Or maybe 5.7 is too low or too low still. You want that to be to 5. Whatever it is, you can adjust it automatically and create your own auto density, right? And then, so if you wanted to go back to the defaults, if you want to overwrite it, so let's say you find what is your personal preferences for auto density. Cool. Go to a new file, right click on the, what is that thing? The lettering element. Go to that button, change it to what you want it to be, whatever that is. And then up here, save current settings to default. It'll overwrite what the old auto was to now yours is the default. Okay, so yeah, the autos do change from version to version, so they are optimized for all kinds of things, and you know, personal preferences of whoever was working on it. Then they do some test sewing, and you know, it's what works well for most applications. Is it right for you? You're not liking it, so no, it's not, right? So in that case, just go, you can modify it to be what you prefer, but this is the sizes that they change at. So you can go and adjust those densities to be whatever you want. Try it. If it ends up making things better for you, then you can save that to the defaults and you're good to go. All right. But yeah, the nice thing about auto density is it's dynamic, right? So it takes into account when things are really narrow and when things are really wide, and it changes the density, right? When things get really narrow, you don't need 10,000 stitches in a tiny little spot, which is why the densities increase. When it gets wider, the stitches, you can afford to have stitches a little closer together to fill it in a little bit more, right? Because the stitches kind of flop around a little bit. So you want them to have good coverage still. So decreasing the density in the wider regions makes sense. Okay, so that's why auto density is convenient. And you can adjust it to be whatever it is you'd like. All right, so let's see. What other questions do we have? Does that help any? My presser foot has a problem. I can't adjust it different heights anymore. When I turn the adjustment gear, nothing happens. Can you replace or fix it myself? You should be able to do an adjustment on the left-hand side under the left cover. I did not. I was hoping to go get a picture of it for you out there. But on the left-hand side, just like when you do your 10 million stitch maintenance, I believe, when you go adjust your X cables, and you grease the reciprocators and the cam on the back and the reciprocator, you have to take those black covers off, right? So when you take those if you take a black cover off the front of the machine, put it back before you do anything, because otherwise the needles fall and then you have to get a tech. All right, but on the left hand side, so if you move your needle case all the way to needle 16, and then you can take that black cover off there, the gear, you'll see it there, and you can see the cam and all of that adjusts it. So you can loosen it up and adjust it there so it works for you. I would e-stop the machine and lower the needle manually so you can see how it works. So yes, you can do it. Do not color change. Do not color change unless you put the black cover back. I can't say that enough times, okay? Otherwise, a tech will have to come out. So just always put the black covers on before you do anything. Don't turn off the machine. Don't power it. If you power it off, certainly do not power it back on because it's going to move. So put the cover back before you do anything. All right. What other questions? So those were all the questions that were sent in. I don't see anyone being very chatty online today. Any questions that you guys might have to put in the chat? Because I don't see any today so far. Let me go look online just in case they're not popping up on my little application here. No, they're not online either. Cool. I hope everyone's having fun with the holiday season. I'm full on at it, trying to get these Black Friday and Cyber Monday stuff out of here. So, work. Any questions before we call it a day? So I'll be back next week. Let me make sure that's a true statement. Going to my calendar. Yeah, I got nothing going on. Orchestra concert at night. You guys don't care about that. Yeah, so I'll be back next week. So if you have questions, remember you can type them in on these forums, right? So if you go to, I like showing people how to get to things, right? So if you go to melco-service.com, click on this FAQ, and then right here is DesignShop. The very first thing is this DesignShop Talk episodes. And right there is the link to watch them. And right here is where you can go click to type in questions. Yeah, so that's where you would type in questions that you would have. You can do that any time of day, and it'll be there for next week. Yeah, corners are always interesting, and managing them. So someone typed in, following along, thanks for going over those corners. It's annoying, yeah. You can do them manually a whole bunch of ways, so I think I've shown that here and there. I'll do it again just because, actually, let me go see if I can open up a file, then I don't have to redraw a bunch of stuff. One moment. Yeah, because I go back and forth between using the corner tool and drawing them myself, really depending on my mood, because I like digitizing, so sometimes I'll just do it because I like it. Let's see, corners, where is my file? There it is. Yeah. So if you just draw that without corners, you'll end up with this mess, right? And it looks cute on the screen, but when it goes to sew, because you've had so many stitches in this area, it ends up looking like a mushroom, and looks pretty awful, right? So you can go into that, turn on your corners, and there's different types of corners. There's the miter. There's this one, which is like 2 overlapping single lines. You've got the cap, which I like the cap look personally, but each their own, right? So you can always use the corners, or you can, let's say you don't have access to that. You can draw them yourself, right? So that one over here that I did was style 2 on the miter, right? That was just 2 single lines overlapping, all right? So to do that, I'll just draw it here. So draw 1 single line, enter, enter, draw another one, enter, enter, right? And I can line those up a little bit better so that stitch is there and it looks nice and clean. So that would be 1. And they sew continuously, right? I can create my own miter if I go into the properties just to show you. So that would be like this one. So if I want to create a miter along there, that would be closer to this one, right? Where I can use a column and, oops, gotta do it down here first. There, and there, and then do this guy like that, right? So I can create my own miter, covered up, but there you go, right? So I can create that, and again, it will sew continuous. It has some overlap just because I digitized the overlap in there, right? So we don't end up with a big gap along that miter, so that's cute. If I want to do caps, we've got a few ways we can handle those, right? So in here, I can do that using 3 elements. I can use it as 1. So if I'm doing it as 1, I probably would just do a, what's it called? This thing. Complex fill. Goodness. And I'm just tracing this for convenience. So if I do like that, okay. Now I got to pay attention to my stitch direction. So I want one that way. I want to first change this over to satin, and now let's add more stitch directions. I want that one that way, and I want this one going across the top here. See that? That's just the knot right there. So I can move my tie in and tie out to be somewhere else, and it'll get it gone from there. So now I created my own cap. I can do that same cap with a series of elements, right? So I can do this one. Let's give it another color so you can see what I'm actually doing. And then I could do this guy. It would help if I trace nicer, but you know, you guys get the idea, I hope. There you go. So then I would personally monkey with this to make the stitch directions a little more seamless, right? So rather than having it as kind of cockeyed, it looks more blended that way, right? So then I just pay attention to how I do it. So this one, start, end, and then it does this one, ends up here. Again, those sew all continuous, and it's done manually. All right, so you've got a lot of choices, whether you use the corner tool, you know, some versions of you don't have the, let's say if you've got just DesignShop standard, you don't have professional, you're not gonna have the corner tool. So how do you manage that? Well, I would do it like this, right? So if I wanna create my own, just do it as 2 elements, I get a minder. I do it as a complex fill like this, add my stitch directions, now I got a cute cap, right? So you have choices on how to manage that. Does that help at all of managing corners? So doing it by yourself versus, you know, this is what I would call doing it by yourself, doing all these elements, versus just using the corner tool, which is a productivity enhancement, right? It just makes it go faster. All right, what other questions might y'all have? Okay. Well, if that is everything, like I said, don't forget to type in your questions, send them in. That's where I get stuff to start with and not look silly talking to myself. So I greatly appreciate you sending them in early. Yeah, if you have DesignShop Professional, you're gonna have the corner tool. So you can play with the settings there to see what suits you. Like I said, every now and then I just do it manually because it's just as quick. Correct. The caps are sometimes off based on the stitch direction, and you can modify your stitch directions. It also has to do with the angle of how tight the angle is, of where it switches over to whether it's going to do a corner or just swing around. So that plays a role into it, yeah. All right, y'all. I will be back next week. Oh, here. That's the mushroom effect I was talking, when it swings around. When you sew like that, you end up with like so many stitches in a tiny little area that it kind of blossoms out and looks ridiculous. Just because the volume of stitches, that thread is thick. You stack it on top of each other 100 times and it's thick. All right, y'all. Yeah, I'm happy to help. So let me know what you want to talk about, what questions you might have. Type them in on that form and we'll try to get that answered for you. I will be back next Thursday. Have a fantastic weekend and have some fun sewing. Bye, everyone.